Okay, guys, welcome back to a new video here. I got a wild one for you. Joe Rogan has gone after Kamala Harris and basically attacking her campaign for specifically saying, hey, Joe Rogan kind of screwed us here with the booking and basically why Kamala didn't go on the podcast. The Kamala Harris campaign basically came out and kind of brutally attacked Joe Rogan, saying they kind of rat screwed us here. And Joe said, no, that's not what happened at all. He responded to the Harris campaign and the entire thing has been pretty wild. So I'm just going to read you what exactly Kamala Harris said and her campaign said regarding the Joe Rogan situation. And before I go any further, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. It's super good for the algorithm. A Patreon link if you want to support the channel that way is in the description. And Amazon link to products I use are also in the description. So keep liking, keep subscribing, and help the channel out immensely. Okay, so like I said, Kamala Harris did not go on the Joe Rogan podcast pretty infamously. It was a major, major campaign storyline, and I'm going to show you exactly what happened there. So before we go any further, let me just show you the clip of Joe Rogan talking about why exactly Kamala Harris didn't go on the podcast, responding to some of the claims made by Kamala Harris and her team. So here's the first clip, guys.
And they said a bunch of things that weren't true. They talked to supposedly talked to like 150 different people about her and what happened with her coming on the show. I don't know if it's 150. A lot of people. They didn't talk to us, and which is kind of crazy. And which is like they didn't even ask. But they said things that just weren't true. One of the things they said that weren't true was that we lied about the day that Trump was coming on. No, we just didn't tell you that Trump was coming on. He was already booked a long time ago. This is how it worked. Trump was really easy to book, like super easy. We offered one day. He said yes. That was it. There was no, what are we going to talk about? How long is it going to be? Is it going to be edited? There was nothing. Yeah. What's the waiver? Here, give me that waiver. Sign it. It was so easy. So he was already booked. They never committed to doing the show. So all this talk, there was another thing they said that the reason why they did the Beyonce thing, the Beyonce event in Houston, was so that they could be in Texas to do my show. They never agreed to do the show. None of that's true. They never agreed.
That's fucked.
They also said that they sent someone down here to the studio to do a walkthrough of the set. That's not true. The Trump administration did. I mean, if they are trying to say that they, as in the entire federal government, well, I don't think the Trump, well, I guess the Secret Service is a part of the federal government. Maybe you can kind of get away with saying that because the Secret Service came down here for Trump and looked around that we sent someone down, but it was not. It was the Trump administration sent them down because they're the only ones that had a date to do the show. These people didn't have a date to do. They never agreed to do the show. This is really important. Even after Trump went on, they offered for me to come to D.C. and do a show with Kamala. But even then, it was the same deal. It was only like 45 minutes to an hour. And, it was not on my set. And I said that, look, he did it here. We should probably do it here. Like, if it's possible to do it here. Obviously, when he did it, it had an enormous result. I'm willing to do the same thing for her. I wanted to release both of them on the same day. This was my goal. I was even trying to figure out if there was a way that I could do it. And I even offered to do it late that night. So the night that Trump came on, I'm like, what if we do her, like when she's done in Texas, if she came here? But no one ever committed to doing it. This is like really important because they keep pretending that I lied or I did this or I did that. They never committed to doing it.
Okay, guys. So again, Rogan basically saying everything the Kamala Harris campaign is saying regarding this is complete BS. So let's get right into specifically what the Harris campaign said, and I'm going to tell you my take on it. So first off, this is the direct quote from the excerpt, basically the book that Rogan is talking about on the Harris campaign and everything that happened. We could do Friday the 25th, Flaherty said, again, a Harris campaign aide. Wish we had known about this sooner because he has the 25th blocked out as a personal day, one of Rogan's reps said. What about Saturday morning, Flaherty continued. Only if it's before 8:30 a.m. came the tough reply. Again, Rogan says the reason why he did the 8:30 a.m., why it had to be before 8:30 in the morning, is because he already had scheduled a UFC Fight Night podcast for later in the day that he already committed to. Now, again, continuing on, the tone is different, Flaherty thought. The vice president of the United States is offering to have come on your effing show, and you keep putting up more hoops. Harris's team still wanted to make it work, but a new wariness set in. Again, Rogan in the last clip was saying Harris never really committed to doing the podcast, which, again, I actually believe because I don't think Joe would make a claim saying, okay, we're not going to do this here. We're not. He would not directly say that they did not commit if it wasn't true. Because again, Joe, I think, would not lie about that, because there would be receipts the Harris campaign could have and just release it. So I don't think it's necessarily true in this excerpt from the book. On October 22nd, the same day the Harris camp announced a rally, the Associated Press reported that Trump would be Rogan's guest on Friday, the quote unquote personal day Rogan had originally reserved. Again, Rogan doesn't really address this. He says Trump, it was very easy to book him, and he wanted to have Harris on later that night, but she already was scheduled for something else that night. Mutual friends from Elon Musk and Dana White had convinced Trump and Rogan to bury their dispute. According to a Trump aide, there would be no Harris interview. Now, I'm telling you right now, this I definitely agree with. You cannot tell me that Elon Musk was not lobbying Joe Rogan not to have on Harris. I think that's absolutely true, and I think it definitely had an influence on Rogan based on whatever he says right now, because I think it's 100% true. That's what's happening. Now, as for what Rogan's saying, where, hey, they never committed, and I did not want to go to DC to interview Kamala Harris. I think that's probably true, and I think it's fair. I think it's fair that he didn't want to go to DC. He wanted to have her in studio. Fine. The one thing I take mess, and I actually agree. I've been critical of Rogan over the past few months, but I do kind of believe him. I don't think he was trying to screw her, because again, even all that UFC fight night, that podcast they had, I specifically remember Rogan's basically even at the time saying he wants to have her on the show. So I do buy that. Now, again, do I think the 8:30 a.m. thing? Listen, man, you got the Vice President of the United States on. You can push back a UFC Fight Night podcast. I'm sorry, that's not a good enough excuse for me. But hey, who am I to judge? Again, it's super interesting to see how Rogan's responding to this, because again, this is a major story. A lot of the narrative about this is, oh, Rogan just screwed Harris here. I'm not sure it's 100% fair. And listen, I think it's also fair to say on the other side, I'm not sure Rogan would have been a fair interviewer. I think it's pretty clear where he leans these days. We've talked about Rogan in the past. He's definitely on the right wing. I think it's probably true that she might not have handled it very well, and that's why she didn't go on the show. Also, Rogan might not have been a fair interviewer as well. That's just my opinion. People will disagree. But again, it's pretty wild. And here's the next clip Rogan talking about. It's more about the exchanges between his team and the Harris campaign. Again, the key thing he emphasizes, guys, is that his team never got a commitment from Harris. And basically, his team was easy to deal with. So, again, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. We might never know the full truth of this. But here's a second clip, guys, and we'll talk about it after.
Of conversations that took place. They never said she was going to do it. So this whole idea that we fucked her over and then we fucked her over for Trump, incorrect. Just not true.
And she,
but I think it's someone trying to cover their ass for the fact that she never did it, and if she did do it, it might have had a positive effect.
Yeah,
if her and I had a good time and we got along great, and she won over, the air quote young male vote, things could have been different. Who knows? So this guy's probably trying to cover his ass.
That's what I'm thinking too, is because the reaction to her not coming was like pretty big.
But they didn't commit to doing it. This is the thing. While this guy's saying like that we were difficult to deal with, not true. We were super easy. We made it real clear. But also, it's got to be the actual real show. It shouldn't be some fake version of it where I'm sitting in a conference room. Also, they wanted a stenographer in the room. They wanted staff in the room. Trump was just in here by himself.
Yeah.
Just me, him, and Jamie. That's it. For 3 hours. Like, they wanted to do everything. They wanted it very controlled, and they were really concerned that it wasn't going to be edited. So I don't think they ever really were sure they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Then once Trump did it, and it had this huge response, I think then it was like, what the fuck? What are we doing? He just did it. It's got 50 fucking million views. This is so stupid. Why didn't we do it? And so then there was, even then, when they offered to do it in D.C., my manager asked, is she committed to doing this? If I bring this to Joe, no, she hasn't committed to doing this. Have you brought this to her? Like, they wouldn't even say whether or not she had expressed willingness to do it or whether they were trying to convince her to do it. We know for sure there were some people that were supposedly on her staff that were against her doing it. They thought it was because it's a bunch of wokesters. They're basically in a cult. You have a Look, if you're willing to go on Fox News. You talked to, what's that guy's name, Brett Breyer?
Yeah.
Where they cut that off after 20 minutes. When they did that, that's when I was like, look, it's got to be in the studio. It's got to be in the studio, and it's got to be real. It's got to be a real conversation. I had entertained a couple of times going to, but I was like, 45 minutes is just not enough. You and I have been talking an hour and a half already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, it seems like the main point of contention here is whether or not the Harris team and the Rogan team basically who's lying about being difficult to deal with. Did the Harris team ever commit to it? Again, it seems as though the other side is accusing the other side of doing the same thing. And to me, I think it's probably I think Joe is being genuine. It's possible people on his own team aren't even telling him or communicating correctly what exactly happened. But I got to be honest, I kind of agree with Joe where he's saying I think it might be someone on the Harris team trying to cover up the fact that hey, Harris might not necessarily be she didn't want to do the interview, and I don't think it's necessarily crazy. We talked about this in the past. I'm not sure Rogan would have been the fairest of interviewers, and I think people on her team definitely knew that. And I think maybe even her personally wasn't. Again, she's not known to be going into these difficult interview areas. She did Brett Baer, okay, fine, but again, she was not as strong of a candidate. I think again, Bernie Sanders went in there, no problems whatsoever. I think if you had a stronger candidate, I think maybe it wouldn't have been this difficult. Again, the fact that there needed to be a stenographer, they wanted editing, I think it was because they weren't sure it would be a fair interview, and I don't know if they were that confident in their candidate Harris. So again, it's super interesting to see how this all played out. I'm not sure. I tend to believe Joe, but again, I think it's also possible that maybe the Rogan campaign wasn't being as generous to the Harris team. Maybe it's possible they treated the Trump campaign maybe a bit more generously because again, Rogan endorsed Trump. He's on the Trump train, so I don't think it's crazy to say, "Hey, you know what? He gave more favorable conditions to the Trump team," and it's pretty crazy. But again, pretty much brutally attacking the Harris team here, ripping them to shreds, saying basically you're liars. That's not true at all. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Pretty wild stuff, though. I mean, it's pretty viral. So pretty wild story, guys, and that's what I got for you guys today. Again, make sure to like and subscribe. It's super good for the algorithm. And yeah, that's what I got for you guys, and I'll see you later.